time where I couldn't pay my investors back because of me messing up the company or me not picking the right business partner. So I've always wanted to have an incubator. I've always wanted to have a place where people could come, and if they had an idea or if they needed help with something, especially within the business realm, we'd have experts to help them, to work with them, make sure they didn't feel like how I felt when I was 16 trying to start that business. Ever since, we've just been making a big impact on people and businesses and communities.
Are there any systems that you put in place right now to help with more consistency?
I just force myself to be consistent.
Most people celebrate success when they see the outcome, the business, the recognition, the impact. What they rarely see are the years that come before it, the doubts, the failures, the sacrifices, and the moments when walking away would have been the easier choice. My guest today is Joshua Gray. By the time he reached his late 20s, he had already started 12 businesses. Today, he leads an organization that has helped create billions of dollars in economic impact across this community.
I have something to show you.
Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez.
It's nothing scary. But I was just curious.
Oh, man. Oh,
does that mean anything to you? Hi, Joshua.
Hello, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Well, welcome to the Conscious Lane.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And Joshua, a handful of years ago, when you were in your late 20s, at that time, most people your age are still figuring out their first career. But you had already started 12 businesses. You navigated real failure. You fought through challenges that I believe would have stopped most people. And you went on to build an organization that has created over $10 million in economic impact in this community. That's really huge. And, going back to your childhood, I know, you grew up in Three Rivers and you started your first business in middle school. And my question is, if we were to go back to that time, what were you trying to solve? Was this about money or was it something else?
I would say, yeah, back then, definitely about money. I remember I wanted a drum set, and I was getting into marching band at the time, so I didn't have any of those things. So I just started mowing lawns to get money to do that, to purchase that. And then also I didn't really have a lot of game systems, so I would go to a lot of garage sales and make sure I had money for that. I also having money and food and things like that, like going out to eat. So it was just 100% about money at the time. So
okay.
I didn't even know if there was actually a problem to solve. I just knew I wanted some money.
Right.
And the only job I had at that time was detasseling. Detasseling is usually just in the summer. You get up real early. You're usually on the bus at like 5:30 a.m. They take you to wherever the fields are, usually in Indiana or mostly, a lot of times it's Indiana. It'll be half-hour bus ride to 2-hour bus ride, just depending on where you're going. Get off the bus, start going down rows. Usually have a partner and go down the row, detassel, and it was awful. But
wow, I can imagine.
Yeah, all the money went towards, saved it all. My parents had me save it so it could go towards college. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I saw as well when I was doing the research for this that you had paid for college out of pocket.
Yeah, so I paid for maybe like half or so of it, and then my parents, they would save a lot of their tax returns and save that up over the years in order to help me go through college. So I had no debt when I got off college, at least no college debt. And yeah, it was pretty nice. Didn't have to worry about that.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this drum set. Did you end up getting it?
Yes. So I ended up getting a drum set.
Okay. And is that an interest that you've kept until now? Like your music interest?
Yeah, but I ended up selling my drum set to get a snowboard.
So talking about business, you've started 12 businesses before your current venture, Room 35. Most people never start one, and so when you think about that number 12, what does that mean to you? What does that represent? Is it like curiosity, restlessness, ambition, or is there something there?
I would say it was more so need, curiosity, and then, yeah, I guess ambition, because I've always want to, I mean, when I was younger, I was help managing a mom and pop shop in Three Rivers, and they ended up going out of business. And it seemed like it was just around maybe some different, just a few different things why it went out of business. And the owner couldn't, they couldn't help it. Just things ended up slowing down, or not really sure why it went out. But I remember really wanting to bring it back because I was really close with the owner and their family at the time. And it was like, it really bothered me that, no one would really take me seriously about wanting to reopen it. I came up with business plans and trying to come up with all the financials, what it would take in order to do that. And of course, at the time, they weren't super great, just like very boilerplate things.
How old were you at the time?
I would say maybe 16.
Okay.
Maybe
Like
16.
high school-ish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say 16 or 17. I can't remember exactly. No one really took me seriously. Wasn't able to reopen it. It's never been reopened. A lot of different businesses have gone through that location ever since then. But from that moment on, I was like, hey, I'm just going to dedicate the rest of my life to making sure I can help companies not go under. And I knew that in order for me to do that, I would have to work in multiple different industries and learn how to be an effective entrepreneur so I could really help the businesses.
Okay. So as you were, you started the first one, the second, and you were working these many different ventures or involved in them, you were gathering experience as well.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I would say that. I was extremely unfocused at the time, I would say. I always had hundreds of ideas, and I always wanted to try them all. Like, I was extremely, I would say I was a pretty hyper person, lots of energy. So if there's a friend that said, hey, I wish I could start this, I'd be like, okay, let's start it. And I would show up at their house the next day. It's like, hey, let's do this. Some of them were like, you're just crazy. So I would just do it on my own, or I was just either doing it on my own or working with a business partner that really wanted to start something. And I was like, hey, let's do it then. So.
Do you think that, shaped you to be any specific type of person? Like, taking all of those risks, I imagine that would have been a lot of risk, which is the reason why most people don't end up starting anything, is that it's very risky, it's scary. Were you not scared?
I didn't, no. I always knew from when I was younger I'd be an entrepreneur, even before I knew what it was. Because I remember when I was really, really young, I don't know why it stands out, I was maybe in between 8 and 10 years old, maybe even 7 and 8. I was standing out in the backyard, and the whole entire backyard was covered in those white dandelions. And I remember going inside and telling my mom, it's like, hey, I'm gonna have as much money as there are the little dandelion pieces of pollen. I'm gonna buy every house in the block. And I remember saying that, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be a millionaire. And she was a little confused on why I thought that, but I always had that in my mind. I had a goal of being a millionaire at 25, and I chased that extremely aggressively. And looking back, focusing heavily just on the money wasn't the best idea. And I didn't really take the proper steps to do that, but always wanted to own a business, and not really work for someone. So I would say it didn't really shape me on not worrying too much about things, especially money or different situations that I was in. But I would say that it caused me to be more of a up and down type person. Because there's the like really big highs and the really big lows in business. And I feel like that's kind of carried out through my whole entire life, where I have like really big highs, really big lows, and not a lot of consistency. More so like as I got older, there's more consistency and stability. But on my way there, it was very like, who knows what's going to happen type deal.
So I like what you just said now, and it would be nice for us to dwell on that because I think it's very relevant. So money as a driver, or like, the desire to succeed as a driver for, like running a business or an enterprise. And what I'm hearing you say now is that alone is not the best of drivers, right? Like the pure raw desire to just like be rich. Are you saying then that like is not, that alone is not sufficient? So would you add something to that, or would you like just remove that entirely?
Well, I would say, there's nothing wrong in money being the driver, because every entrepreneur is different. They all have different motivations. But I would say that you definitely have to have some type of passion or reason behind it beyond money, because once you get the money, it's like what's
next?
What's next? Or I worked all my life to get this. What have I done it really for beyond just money? And for me, always looking back towards my ultimate reasoning behind wanting to be an entrepreneur was to help people.
Right.
That's kind of what has motivated me. And every time I would, point back or like start looking back towards the main reason why I am doing this, I was a little bit more happy and end up making even more money by following that, instead of just completely focusing on the money like any means necessary.
I like that. So if you follow the passion, it would most likely have you take maybe different steps, than like if it was just the pursuit of like the bottom line.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a couple sides to it too, because I would say you can follow your passion, but you also have to make sure that you're doing something the market wants. Because you can, let's say like you're super passionate about taking care of animals.
Right.
And you're in a small town, you're trying to do this full time. Maybe there's only 20 dogs, that you can take care of.
Right.
That's not a lot of money, especially if you're doing like, $10, $20 an hour on that, or, $200 a walk. That doesn't really add up to a super sustainable company. It's more so like a side hustle. And, you have to really make sure that the demand is there. Because a lot of times entrepreneurs will have ideas, and I had plenty of ideas, but I didn't realize the demand for that idea was not there. And that caused me to pivot and start doing a little bit more research on what problem I could solve that was needed within the area I was, and if that need wasn't big enough to accomplish the financial goals that I had, going to a different area.
So if you're looking at the 16-year-old Joshua right now, who was really hungry and like not scared to start all these different businesses, how would you advise him to behave differently?
I would probably advise him to like get a mentor that was living the exact life that you wanted to live and accomplish the things that you wanted to accomplish. Because I relied a lot on the internet myself, not a lot of mentors. And yeah, as time went on, I made sure that I had mentors in place that would teach me a lot, but not ones that were living the exact lifestyle that I wanted.
So what's the advantage in that?
It's basically they already have a blueprint. They can tell you like what to do differently. You would just learn from all their mistakes without having to make your own mistakes. And I'm a pretty hard-headed person, at least I used to be, where I wanted to make my own mistakes, even if someone told me like this is going to end up turning out not great. And having that mentality wasn't super great, I would say, when I was younger. Because if I just listened to different mentors, and if I had a mentor that lived the exact lifestyle and accomplished the things that I wanted to accomplish, would have turned out way better. So to your original question, it would have helped if I had that type of person, because they can tell me all the mistakes that they made and the type of path that I should follow in order to get to where they're at.
Yeah, I think the need for mentors is very much undermined. It's not talked about as much as it should be. Because, you know, even in my own case right now, I feel like I could benefit from like the guidance of someone who's living the life that I want to live, you know, like, and sometimes I don't know. I don't know if would you say it's easy to find someone like that? Like in your case, if you think back to like your journey so far, do you think there were like people around that you could have like tapped to mentor you? Is it like, so when people don't have mentorship, do you think is like a lack of awareness on their own side, or lack of like availability of a mentor?
I would say availability of a mentor, because I come from a small town, and there really wasn't anyone that was living the life that I wanted to live that I had any type of connection to. So I would say, you know, it's like the availability, because that's why a lot of people will move to larger cities, just to be around more, like a higher density of people that you could potentially extremely relate to, or the type of life that you want to have. So you know, run into them and hopefully make a good connection where they can be your mentor. But also it's sometimes difficult to get a mentor from your own ego, thinking you can do it on your own, because that was how it was for me. At times, like I had a huge ego for a while, or just from a lack of knowledge of how to network and approach somebody.
So there's a lot of humility that comes with like submitting to someone as a mentee, like, and telling them, hey, like, you know, I want to learn from you and I want to do what you're doing. And you think seems like most young people, myself included, are not just willing to embrace that and just be like, hey, I don't think I know enough on this subject. I want to learn from you.
Yeah, and a lot of the times those mentors aren't, I mean, almost all the time, like there's a lot of courses online now where it's, you know, like, hey, I'll coach you on this or I'll coach you on that. Because they pop up all the time, like throughout social media, a lot of these different like gurus and coaches. And a lot of times the mentors that you're going to find, at least in my experience, aren't really the ones that are promoting that, where you have to pay like a subscription, things like that. A lot of my mentors are just doing it for just to give back, or for free, or that they like me. So.
Okay. So let's talk about the IRS. So you were audited by the IRS, and when I think of that, it sounds very scary to me. You know, so can you take me through, that? What happened? Did it change anything about how you think in general?
Well, at first it was kind of scary because I was getting a lot of letters, and I wasn't really keeping track of money at all. I wasn't really reporting anything, and wasn't keeping any type of receipts or paper trail. So, you know, when I started making money, you know, all of a sudden making like $100,000 a year, when the previous year I made 20, maybe 15,000, just depending on where I was at. It was just, you know, they're just like, hey, how'd you do this? And taxes were coming up, really wasn't paying my taxes at all. So they're sending me letters. I got a call once or a couple different times. And I was kind of always trying to dodge them. I don't know why. I was just like a little worried. So yeah, I mean, the main thing from that was just making sure that you at least try to work with them. Because I mean, I even had a business partner who this was like a real audit where the IRS was telling them like, hey, because it was an all cash business, like completely cash. They didn't really keep track of any receipts. When they filed, if they filed, You know, it was just kind of like, hey, this is how much we made. There's no real paper trail. And a lot of times they would say, hey, we did a lot of losses, but just didn't make a bunch of sense on paper. So, you know, for them, they had to, you know, they had to write down all of the transactions that they did, like the expenses, different material that they purchased, get as many receipts as possible, and they mailed all that into the IRS, and they're able to get off. They attempted, and as long as you try with IRS or make some type of,
Like a good faith adjustment in.
they're really chill about things.
Okay.
Because I was fined a couple times for one of the companies I was working on, and couldn't really afford the fine at the time. And I just gave them a call and said, hey, you know, is there a way for us, like this is my first fine, is there a way for you to waive this if I, you know, just pay this right now or start a payment plan? And they're like, yeah. I mean, I was on the phone for an hour or so, but
dang.
you know, they're able to waive it. And even with back taxes, because I think at one time, like $60,000 in taxes that I needed to pay.
For the business?
Personal.
Personal, $60,000?
Yeah. It's not like that anymore. And I was like, there's no way for me, because I just wasn't paying my taxes.
Yeah.
I was filing, but I just wasn't paying them. Because I like spending money. I like having money, and I'm a little extreme with things. But, you know, just calling them up, starting up a payment plan. And again, no longer I have that type of debt.
Right.
But with the state or government. But, you know, just having good faith, you know, they'll help you out. They'll work with you. There is like an interest rate attached to it, so try to pay that off as quickly as possible. But, you know, as long as you're communicative with them and you can negotiate things.
Building all of this hasn't just been like a business journey. I know it's been, some part of it must have been deeply personal as well. And, you know, I would like to give you space to share as much or as little of that, what that personal journey looked like. So like personally, what did it cost you, you know, to run all of the businesses that you had run before Room 35 and right now that you're running that? Did it have like, I know we talked a bit in the beginning before the call about like the number of hours and all of that you had to work, you know, so in general, what other costs, if any, did he have personally?
Well, I've sacrificed like a lot of time with my family, with my friends. I've missed a lot of funerals, a lot of weddings. Yeah, missed a lot. And in the pursuit of, you know, becoming a successful business owner, like a super, you know, successful, known entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. And yeah, I would say, you know, there's a lot of like really low lows. You know, there's a time where I couldn't pay my investors back because of, you know, me messing up the company or me not picking the right business partner. And yeah, you know, letting people down and a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of anxiety, at least for myself, on like, how am I going to, when things aren't going great, like how am I going to cover this bill? How am I going to be able to put, you know, cover the things that I need to for the family. So a lot of anxiety, not really super sustainable life or like a super consistent life at all. So that caused a lot of anxiety for my family because they're like, you know, you could have got a job anywhere, whatever. You know, you could be making really consistent money, like 6 figures with benefits and things like that. So a lot of anxiety with my family, which caused me to, you know, doubt myself a lot on if this is the path I should go. So yeah, I mean, a lot of sacrifice of time, because I'm not super close with my family. I see my parents maybe, you know, more often now, but there's times where I didn't see them for like years, because I was so busy. And they only live, you know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes away. But yeah, sacrifice a lot of time with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. sacrificed a bunch of time with her, and because there's times I would travel to Florida for a month, we wouldn't really talk too much because I'm like working the whole entire time, or I'd be driving to California, or you know, just going wherever the money's at, and yeah, just a lot of sacrifice. I wouldn't recommend someone so young to start a business without having a really good, sustainable life and having things set, because it's pretty stressful and difficult to have a like a family or a wife or a partner, things like that. Just can't really. You end up neglecting them. At least that's what I did for many years, like neglected my family and my partner.
That's very deep. I'm like, no. I'm like, that really is touching something, because I feel like I'm at the stage personally where I'm trying to build something, and I think a lot of people in their early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s as well, at the stage where they're trying to build something. It could be it could be their passion, start a business, or just whatever it is. It could be their career. They feel like, okay, I got to put my feet down and grind, to have an edge in the industry and all. And then it's just very scary because all of the sacrifices that you have to make. But then on one hand, right, is it easier as you get older, or is it harder? And I ask that because, as you keep getting older, I imagine your responsibilities continue to increase. If you had a girlfriend, hopefully she becomes a wife, and then, you might have kids, you have more people who depend on you. And I see the possibility of people finding it more difficult at that time to just pull the plug and be like, hey, I was making $150K a year, but right now I'm starting from zero. I'm going back to start a business, so, but I also see the angle of build some buffer first and then start something, so is that do you think that's a good compromise, when you're working, setting up?
I would, that's the way I've done it. Okay. If I went back, because you get experience. Because a lot of times, well, I wouldn't say a lot, but I find that some of the most successful entrepreneurs come from the industry they're working in, and they just find a problem or something that the company that they're working with, didn't want to focus on, or didn't see themselves. And they, even with my business partner that I have now, he came into the company with already having enough money to be able to just hey, I got money where I don't really need to work. And I came into the company off of a failed business. Well, not really failed, but I just left. My business partner and I didn't see eye to eye on it. And, I didn't really come with much at all besides my experience at the time. So, having a nest egg is way easier. And as you get older, you have more responsibilities, but hopefully you have more money saved and more experience. Because a lot of the successful business owners that I know are much older than me, or not much, but are definitely older than me. And they either had a job for a very long time, or, were able to find a really good problem to solve they had expertise in. So.
Gotcha. I think that's very key. That's relevant. I was just thinking, you mentioned some of the challenges that you had and all. Is there any specific one that you remember, maybe one of your drives to California or something from the examples that you gave that you would like to share?
I guess a challenge is sometimes being able to believe in yourself when no one else believes in you. Because there's been, the majority of my life, my parents and family are just what are you doing? Why are you doing this? This doesn't seem like a path you should go down. And everyone's meant to be a millionaire, they would tell me. Which I don't, anyone, I believe anyone has the potential to be and could if they really wanted to, with the right, resources, the right people around you. But yeah, I think it was a challenge to really, believe in myself throughout the whole entire time, because I doubted myself, especially when the business would go under, or, I had like really deep challenges and was like, hey, this doesn't seem like I'm making enough, or, I'm making a bunch and then that goes away. And it's like, I didn't really save any of this. I was just super excited and just spent it all. So yeah, I guess the challenge was just like believing in myself and being consistent. Because I haven't been a very consistent person throughout my life. A lot of my friends say like I show up and I'm there all the time, then I just vanish for a very long time and I'll show back up. So I think, if I had more consistency throughout my entrepreneurship career, I probably wouldn't have had as many failures, because there's time where, I could work 100 hours and not feel anything at all. And then, all of a sudden it's like, I'm so exhausted, like I can't even get out of bed type deal. And when you're a solo entrepreneur, that doesn't work. You have to be there consistently with your customers and with the people that, you're selling to. So, yeah, that was another challenge, my inconsistency, because consistency is like extremely important as an entrepreneur, and my consistency has been a lot better, and I've got a business partner that's super consistent, so it balances me out a little bit. But yeah, I would say those things were major challenges, and like losing people's investment. That was a huge challenge, because I was like, I just felt like a super failure, making a mistake on the business partner I had, or like, the decisions I made with the money. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I feel you on the consistency thing. I think like for the majority of people, that's like a challenge, doing the same thing every single day, even when you don't feel like doing it. Sometimes even little things like going to the gym, the year starts, you're very excited, you get a membership, and then you go for the first week and the second week, and then you're just like, no, I can't do this. It's winter, we're in Kalamazoo, it's snowing outside, I don't want to go out. So I feel you on that. But I wanted to ask, like, specifically in your own case, why do you think that was? Like the showing up all the time for like a specific period of time and then vanishing.
As I got older, I found out I had kind of like a disorder. So I ended up finding out that I'm bipolar. So bipolar people, which I didn't really realize, because I've had 9 concussions. A lot of times concussions can bring those things on. And you are already naturally up and down. So there really isn't like a consistency, especially as you get older. So I didn't really realize that. So I didn't know why, I had so much energy, then had no energy, and was just kind of inconsistent throughout the years. So I think that had something to do with it, but also like you said, like with the gym type deal, like you as an entrepreneur, you have to be so consistent that you're essentially a bodybuilder. You're going to be a bodybuilder at the end of it. Because if you just stop, you're not building anything. The entrepreneurs, if you relate it to a gym, they got to work out every day. And if you stop working out, someone else is going to work out every day. If you stop learning, someone else is going to get a new technique. So it's like, if you don't have that consistency, it's almost impossible to grow a business to the height that I would like to grow a company. So
are there any systems that you've put in place right now to help with that? Like, the more consistency as you've like grown more, become more established? Is there anything that you're doing that is working for you that other people can practice as well, like myself?
So I just force myself to be consistent. Like I set up things. I used to like move things around on my calendar a lot. I mean, we even moved this once, and not like intentionally.
Right.
But when you have a lot of clients, you can't really move things around. So I just make sure that I have things on my calendar that I should absolutely not move.
Okay.
So I have to leave the house. I have to be in the office, or I have to be on the road. I always have to be doing something, and I make sure that I have quite a bit of responsibility that requires me to be present and consistent. So it's just kind of like setting things up where it's like if I don't be consistent, that's just gonna be terrible. It's not gonna look good. It's not gonna cause the business to grow, and I just force myself at this point. I use a calendar, which everybody uses a calendar, but I track everything, so I know exactly what I need to do, and I can see it ahead of time, so I can like mentally prepare myself to be like, all right, like I have to make sure I'm doing this. But yeah, it's taken a while to get to a point where I'm more consistent. I would still say I'm a little inconsistent. But I surround myself with people that are extremely consistent. Because I know that's like a big weakness of mine. But as we're growing, like as I'm growing the company, or like for instance, like Room 35, I know I need to be more and more consistent. Over the years, I have like intentionally worked on that. So, we have employees that have families, and we're at a point where we want to have really nice retirements, not have to work, and have a certain lifestyle where we're on the beach and able to just kind of hang out and not have to worry about pretty much buying anything. So like, and having a business partner, I don't want to let that person down either. And I know they don't want to let me down as well. So it's like a lot of, like you said, there's just like a lot of different pieces that force me to be more consistent, because I will be letting employees and my business partner and my clients and the people we're helping down. And I don't want to do that.
Right. And talking about letting people down, and I think I read somewhere where you were talking about how like in most of the places where you worked, they didn't really have health insurance, for like workers. And it seemed like when you started your business, like you've also described, you wanted to build like an ecosystem, not just a business. Like you wanted to take care of people. You wanted to build something that like someone could show up to and, feel like they're seen,
Yeah.
And I think we've already kind of touched on this, just a little bit, but was there a specific point when your thinking shifted from like building for yourself to like building generally, like for yourself, for the community, and all of that?
Well, I would say like I was in Florida like 6 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, and was helping build a company that the people that I was working with, they're able to retire and live a pretty easy life with being not so hands-on with the business. And I was always talking about wanting to help businesses and work with businesses and have a big impact. And I remember my business partner was like, why don't you just do it? Like, why are you still here then? Like, this isn't what you talk about wanting to do or wanting to do at all. And at the time, I was just mostly just building for myself. It was just building for myself, building to retire on my own. And I just was like, this really isn't, I'm on a path that isn't exactly where I want to be. Because I always thought I needed to have multiple millions like in the bank and have net worth, so people understand like, hey, I really know what I'm talking about. I really have made it. And I always thought that was necessary to make any type of impact or help out people. And I wasn't at that point at the time, but I really took what he said into consideration. And I started calling up old business partners and said, hey, like, why don't we help out small businesses? Because I've always wanted to have an incubator. I've always wanted to have a place where people could come, and if they had an idea or if they needed help with something, especially within the business realm, we'd have experts to help them. We would work with them and make sure they didn't feel like how I felt when I was 16 trying to start that business, bring that mom and pop shop back. So I think, around that time, I really thought about it because I was up pretty late thinking about it. And I called through a lot of different business partners, old business partners, and none of them really wanted to work with small businesses or businesses. They're all, doing other types of things like something in tech or mostly like things in tech. And Donovan, my business partner now, he called me up and he said, hey, like, you want to start a business together? I remember us, working together in high school, or not high school, in college, and us having like a really good system of helping people, especially like through their homework. Because he was a tutor, I was a tutor. We helped like a lot of people pass their classes, understand a lot of different things. And he's like, hey, like, why don't we do something similar in like a business way? So yeah, I flew back from Florida to Michigan, and ever since we've just been making a big impact on people and businesses and communities. So just kind of going back to the original reason why I even started doing this, and hearing from my business partner, like, this isn't even what you want to do. Like, why are you doing this? So yeah, I think, I hope that answers that question. So.
Yeah. Okay. I have something to show you.
Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez.
It's nothing scary. But I was just
Oh,
curious.
man. Oh,
Does that mean anything to you?
Oh, man. Oh, man. Yeah, this is, yeah. Huh. Yeah, this is back when we really didn't know exactly what we're going to do, Yeah, people just knew us as two guys on a plaid couch. They didn't really know. Like, it was crazy too, because we would show up on meetings, like, side by side, like, on one camera on the plaid couch. So they just knew us as the two plaid couch guys. And my hair was super crazy back then. Like, I didn't even, I would just show up because I knew, like, I had to be consistent within this time. And I just show up, get on camera. We had a hoodie on, and we were just helping any type of business. We didn't really have a focus, really. We had no focus. We were just trying to make, Kalamazoo know that we were here to, like, truly help people, and we could make an impact. Just, like, give us a chance. And this was the second office.
Okay.
The first office was in Donovan's apartment, and then he had to move from there, and then he moved here, and the basement was our office. So that was kind of
Was this a West Nashville? This location?
Well, where was you saying?
This particular place now.
Oh yeah, this is
the basement.
Yeah, this was in Kalamazoo. This was like off White's Road.
White's Road.
Yeah, so off West Michigan. Yeah, off White's Road, over by, I don't even know what the landmarks there are, but there's like Little Caesars and Taco Bell and McDonald's over there. Yeah, we didn't have like a lot going on at the time. We had a lot of free time, and I was always tell my business partner, like, yeah, man, just enjoy this. Like, just enjoy this. It's gonna get real crazy soon. Like it's gonna get crazy. We're gonna be super busy all the time.
Right.
Like, just enjoy the amount of free time we have. He's like, man, we should be doing something. Like, I'll just enjoy the free time. Like, we're gonna be wishing we had free time soon. So.
Right.
Yeah, Can Do Kalamazoo. They believe in us quite a bit. Lucy Dilly, she gave us a contract to work with some of the people in her Can Do camp. So it was when they were called Can Do Kitchen before they turned into Can Do Kalamazoo. And yeah, she really believed in us, which we're really thankful for. And we worked with them for a while. You know, without those people, we wouldn't even be here. You know, like all the people at Kalamazoo for Adventures, like they, you know, without them, we wouldn't even, you know, they gave us a really big chance. And Clarence from Southwest Michigan First, like, and Melanie Dakin and Kevin Ford, like they all, and Antonio from the city, like they all just like, hey, like we'll give you a chance. And that was huge, you know. So I was like, hey man, we gotta like knock this out of the park. Like I don't care what we have to do. Like we have to make sure we make everybody proud and like actually make an impact.
Right.
So.
And now these are like, no, I know Can Do Kalamazoo is a nonprofit. Kalamazoo for Adventures, is that a nonprofit as well?
No,
it's not.
So
it's
that's
a for-profit.
Yeah, that's a new company. That it's like the first all-black venture capital.
It's a venture capital.
Funds. They have a few different. They have like Main Street. They have their VC funds, and they also have like a construction side, so development side.
Okay.
And they've been in business for a while. I think they're like on their second year or so, and they've made some extreme impact across Michigan. But before they even started that, you know, they were in different positions, and they all believed in us. Like they really were integral to our success.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I like that you're shouting them out. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, especially Dwayne Powell, man. Oh boy, I remember I called him up. Like I was in, maybe it was my sophomore year, and I called him up. It was when I was doing like cryptocurrency and like crypto mine. Like I was doing all kinds of random stuff. Like I had like 7 different things going on at once. I was really, like I said, I had a bunch of ideas, very unfocused, like just all over the place, trying different things. And my teacher gave me his number. He's like, hey, you should talk to this guy. And he set up a meeting with me, which was super wild. Like it was just some random kid from Three Rivers that would commute from Schoolcraft to, you know, Western all the time. Like I wasn't even from the city. You know, I always wanted to be in Kalamazoo in comparison to like 3 Rivers or Schoolcraft. Because I always thought Kalamazoo was the big city, you know, in comparison.
Right.
And he took a meeting with me, and I was like, yeah, I want to do an incubator. Like I want to, it was just kind of like all over the place. And he believed in me, and it was super cool. So, yeah. And then Dan Jeffries, he's like, hey, like, why don't you meet Dan Jeffries? And he believed in me too. It was like crazy. So.
Wow. Shout out Dwayne Powell and Dan Jeffries.
Yeah.
Okay. And, you know, that's a good segue to the next question that I actually had, because you specifically work with BIPOC communities and like contractors, entrepreneurs, people who often have no generational business blueprint, right, or experience. So what do you see in them that usually they don't see in themselves yet? Like, what do you think someone like Dwayne Powell saw in you, for example, you know, back in the days as well?
Ambition.
Okay.
Yeah. Ambition, the drive to make something happen, even if no one believed in you, or like even if, you know, you didn't really know exactly where you're going to go with it, but at least like taking that leap. So that's what he saw in me. And then I guess what I see in the entrepreneurs we work with, I just see myself in them, like not having a bunch of resources to start, or not having someone just to give you money, or coming from a family with a lot of wealth. Because, you know, it's a misconception that it's a misconception that businesses are just started out thin air with no money. You know, that's not really how it works. You know, there's money involved. There's usually family members that give you money, and people within your close circle that, you know, believe in you. They give you cash to make something happen, or, you know, come from a very well-off family that'll, help support you throughout that. But yeah, seeing them, and not all the entrepreneurs we worked with are like that. Of course, there's plenty that, have nest eggs or, come from an industry, saved up money, but some of them, they started their businesses out of necessity or out of, this is the trade they know, or this is the thing that they know. So I just, I just see like the ultimate goal, of like being able to help whoever that wants to make it happen, make it work, make a business, like be able to take care of your employees and family without having to worry. So, and we've started working with like businesses beyond just BIPOC as well.
Okay. Construction in general is a gold mine that a lot of people don't see. I think it's a path to generational wealth, but it's not really a conversation that most people are having. Why do you think that is?
Because there's like, so my parents are baby boomers, and they always told me just get a college degree. Just get a college degree, you'll be able to make a bunch of money, you'll be really consistent. And, I did get into construction a little bit, never, made it extremely large or anything like that. It was more so just doing, roofs or flooring or just kind of like just a plethora of different construction type, or contracting type things. But I think that it's not something that a lot of people talk about because I guess it's considered like blue collar work. But I mean, that's not really the case. It is something that you can make more money in than getting a job, right out of college. And not many people have the skill, and it's not something that can be automated. So yeah, I just think that people are just misinformed of like, one, how important construction is, how much you can make, and how easy it is to be able to get consistent work and fill a need, because there's such a huge need. I mean, entrepreneurship is about solving problems and fulfilling needs, and it's like something that will always have, a need, especially in the United States, because there's not many new contractors going into the industry. Currently, there's not new people wanting to get into it, but I think that's going to be changing over the next decade.
Gotcha. So what does that opportunity actually look like? So I know not everyone involved in construction is like, like having to nail something together or, like be involved in the renovation themselves and all. But a good amount of people have to do that. But in general, what's like the spectrum of opportunities that you have in construction?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, so we have one client that started out doing everything themselves. So I would say, it's the best example. Well, we have one business out Albion that we got our first one-on-one contract with, and they were used to being on the job site all the time, especially when they were under that $1 million mark. And they went from being on the job site to then managing that job site, like being a supervisor for the crew that they had, to being in the office, like project managing, to just like, instead of just doing the whole entire thing, project managing, to be able to fill these positions, to just doing sales. You can be a CFO at a construction company. Right. You can be a CEO where you're not really on the job site. I mean, there's a lot of different positions that you don't even touch the job site, but are necessary to make that construction company work, especially at the higher level. So I mean, you can be a project manager right out of college. You can be a few different, there's a lot of different positions. I'm blanking, but there's a few different positions that you would see at any normal company.
Construction
company.
Okay. So let's talk about Room 35.
Yeah.
You know, so you guys have created over, $10 million in impact. So when you think about that number, what does that feel like in real terms? Is there like, someone or a life that you've witnessed change, because of what you guys are doing?
I mean, I feel like we've made people's lives a little bit easier where they're not as worried. And we've worked with Isaiah White, where he was able to project out like all the sales that he's going to do, and not really worry about, how much he needs to make, and just kind of all put out there. And he has a clear understanding, and be able to understand like how much you need to save, how much you need to grow, and put aside for your employees, and a pathway to get them insurance, and a pathway to get them retirements. Similar with, I would say like AGL Construction. I think their lives, I mean, they've had a couple of personal things come up, but say his life is a lot easier from when we first met him till now. I mean, we've got him lines of credit, helped him kind of project things out, get an assistant, map out like different jobs, get some connections to different jobs. Oscar Buford, he's in electrical. So Buford Electric, he started off as just a retired electrician, where he was able to we helped him go from no revenue to like 148,000 within his first year, and be able to hire people, create impact with younger people.
Wow.
And feel like he had more of a purpose, beyond just being an inspector or being a teacher. So, he feels like he has a lot more purpose in life. And again, all of them have more money, of course, but
Right.
lively impact. I'd say like Murray Davis. So he was working with Optimal Fire Safety. He was working a second job while working on the business, and we helped him get out of that. His business partner ended up passing away, but we were able to assist him with taking over the whole entire business and like keeping that legacy going on. So I feel like his life feels a little bit more purposeful, and being able to keep that business going on, that his business partner started those years ago. I would say David Thompson with Thompson Electric, his son and him are business partners on that, and his son was like working other jobs, things like that, and we helped him get to a point where they got him some contracts. I mean, I think they're doing like 80,000 or so when they first came on board, and they should be hitting well over $1 million now. So we're able to get like lines of credit for them in order to be able to take on larger projects, line them up with some like pretty consistent larger projects of like 20-30% of their overall revenue, and be able to work full time, start saving money, have more stability. So yeah, I mean, there's a few, and I would say Ernesto, through property management, he had very little direction in the beginning, and had a very big passion, and was really able to help him like see where he wanted to go, plan that out, give him a roadmap on exactly how to do it, and he's doing fantastic now. Like he was even able to get like business connections in Detroit, grow his business where he's able to hire quite a few different people. I think it's like maybe at the 20 person mark from just himself and a couple of subcontractors. So, and there's all the, these are just the larger stories, and we've helped quite a few other people, but we always talk about them. So we're trying to I'm trying to think of some other examples.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a few different ones, and like through our programs, especially like Capital Matters, where it's like financial education. A lot of the people going through that are saying like, hey, we have a true understanding of like our finances and how to categorize things and do the books and pricing, things like that. Because our main areas where we really work on hands-on beyond just the coaching, but like really hands-on implementation is like the finances, because we found that to be a huge issue within businesses, like probably the most important thing beyond just the sales. And operations, so making sure that they don't need to be on that job site. They have things in place where they can just hire people and be able to use those to scale. And then the strategy, so having like really mapping out exactly from like start to finish and where they want to go, so they can see it. It's a lot of times it's just a vision, but when we have that roadmap and able to follow that and like check in with them, make that happen and implement and create that strategic plan for them, that's good. And we have a really good business coach that will do a lot of that coaching and then kind of like push them out to assign to one of our other consultants. So
That's really impressive, man. And, like, you already shared so many of the stories, and I'm sure there's like a lot more that you could share, and it seems to me like you and Donovan have built this business that's all about helping people, just like making tremendous impact in people's lives in general. And that's very commendable. And then I was wondering, so, if there's someone out there who's watching this who is local or, maybe, around Michigan or even beyond, because I know you guys are, like scaling and all, and the person is trying to start a business, so essentially what type of person should that person be to come talk to you? And at what stage in their, like business idea or, running the business should they come? Like, does it matter what type of business they want to run? Does it matter like if they've already been in business for like a year or two? Or if I just have this idea that I think is going to change the world, should I just pick up my phone and be like, okay, I'm calling room 35 now?
I would say my business partner won't be super happy with this, but I would say even if you, from that early stage, you can give us a call to that late stage. Like where we make our money is probably in that later stage, but with starting so many businesses, I have a really big passion of working with companies that are in that early stage. That's like my favorite, is working with those companies in that early stage. And of course, working with the companies in the later stage. But once you get to that later stage, you're like making $45 million. It's like, okay, we're working on a small tweak that we can do to save you $1 million. So it's like, for me, it's not as exciting. I mean, it's all exciting, but going from that start, like from the idea and having someone like on our team be able to like, hey, like we believe in you, we'll work with you and like tell you all of our failures. And if we can't help you, we'll point you in direction with someone that'll be able to help you. Cause like we believe in you. Cause I don't want them to ever feel like they can't, even if that's not the exact idea that they do, they shouldn't give up on that dream of starting a company. So, whoever really wants to, and it doesn't matter what industry, because I mean, I've been doing open hours with salons, consultants in makeup, tech companies, AI companies, rehabilitation type companies. So it's like, it doesn't really matter. You always can reach out, and if we can set up a meeting, or I'll just point you in the right direction. So
okay. So Joshua, the last question that I have for you today is, if a young person from Three Rivers or Kalamazoo or just, I don't know, somewhere in South Dakota is watching this, and the person looks like you, they think like you, and they have this kind of fire that you had, and they're listening to this right now, what is one thing you want them to walk away with?
Be consistent. Yeah. Be consistent. and don't ever give up on yourself or the dream that you have. And always always try things, you know, don't just think about it, you know, don't just think like, hey, like I could do this one day, like, you know, try it out, see how it works, because we only live once that we know of, you know. We only live once, and you don't want to end your life with regrets. Like, what if I could? Or it's like, it should be, I did this and it didn't really work out, but at least I tried.
Right.
Or I did this and it was like the best decision I ever made. And you don't want to, end your life with regrets. Because I'm around a lot of people that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and they have lots of regrets. Like, I wish I could, or I should have done. And, you know, I don't think anyone should feel that way. So.
Well, thank you so thank you so much for sharing that. I think even I personally, like, I've been taking notes, and I know there's a lot of things that I'll be taking away from this conversation. I really liked, you know, the thing that you said about mentorship, you know, how that can really change someone's trajectory. You know, sometimes it takes being around people who have living the life, you know, people who are living the life that you want to live, for you to sometimes catch that fire or refine the fire that you have. I also like, you know, what you said about like having a bunch of ideas but not being focused, right? And then someone pointed you in the right direction and made a connection, right? Because I'm like, it's fine to have ideas. It's fine to just start something. You don't know where you're going, right? You know, just start it, and then sooner or later you'll meet someone who can be like, hey, why don't you talk to this guy or talk to this guy? And, you know, that might just be the connection that you'll never have that connection if you don't even start anything, you know? So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. And, you know, so this honestly is the type of conversation that I started this show to have.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for, you know, for being real, going deep, and, you know, trusting us with your story. It's really been amazing. This few hours, minutes I was spent has been amazing. So thank you for coming on the show.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. And I really appreciate you having me on. I want to make a lasting impact. And I really want people to feel heard and understood. And, you know, I'm really happy that this podcast is happening, because I feel like that is going to really help people relate and be able to maybe feel like understood and not alone. So, yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
That was Joshua Gray, co-founder and CEO of Room 35, and one of the more intentional people I've had a chance to sit with. If this conversation resonates with you, please share it with someone that needs to hear it. That's how this grows. I'm Chilotam Orama, the host of The Conscious Lane, a show where we sit with intentional builders who are shaping the society, and we attempt to go underneath the surface level to find out the real stories. Until next time.